Greetings, friends. As you can see, I'm here in my office with my dream team. We've got Father Patrick over here and Daniel Rosa here. And this week is an important week because actually we're having the deacons preach, and they're preaching particularly on life issues, right? And of course, we have this question number one that's got to do with the so-called right to reproductive freedom. We hear the word autonomy bounced around a whole lot in our culture. That has been a rallying cry around this whole thing. But when it comes to a Christian worldview, autonomy is evil. Okay. God certainly has given us freedom, but how we interpret that is, a whole other thing. So, anyways, I brought Daniel here because he's with formation, with our, and you're concerned about parents and how their role is. Because I was just reading something last night. I think it was Cardinal Manning or Cardinal Newman. They were talking about the secularization that's going on in education in the 19th century in England, and they said there's no such thing as an education without Christian spirituality and morals. You can teach people various things, this and that, but it's not really education. So if it's not happening in our schools, it's got to happen here. What do you guys think? Where are you on this?
Daniel, you're on the front lines.
Well, this is what's interesting. I love hearing that explication of how education necessitates a moral formation. Now, if I put myself in the room with our confirmation program or our faith formation program, before we even get the year started, we want to lay the foundation of what we're going to accomplish this year to the parents. One of my Daniel-isms that I give them is that I'm a fourth-tier influencer in their students' life. First is parents, domestic church, then it's teachers, then it's coaches or extracurricular mentors, and myself is fourth. Because I do that by quantity of time, and I want the parents to know that my whole role is to reignite their faith in a small way so that they're living as a practical Catholic, and they understand that while it looks like my faith is working towards a checkbox faith, rather, if that is my intention, that goes back to a little bit of this autonomy, because if I can check all the boxes, I've done it. But autonomy, independence, that which America is founded upon, is actually anti-Catholic in this sense. We're meant to be dependent on God, dependent on our community, dependent on our spouse, which, my wedding is coming up. And the more I learn about the vocation...
Make sure you get him a present, okay? Wedding present? Okay.
But the more I realize or maybe the more I don't realize how much I lack understanding of the sacrament of matrimony, if my foundation isn't set now, it will not happen to my children.
Yeah.
It will not happen to my children, and I can't do it alone. I mean, that's why I pick... through discernment, the spouse that will work towards building little saints and driving us towards heaven. Because I know when my back's against the wall, I forget things.
Yeah. But like what you're saying, Dan, you got to pick up your responsibility as a parent to do this, but you can't do it yourself. You have to be, the church got to form. Now, I asked you to write down a really long, I heard it's a really long.
It's a long
letter for this week.
Yes, but good content, I think. Right? So interesting to read, I hope. Well, and I'm not mentioning this so much in the letter, but I think it's worth mentioning now as we are trying to form each other. That freedom is a Christian concept in some ways, right? That for freedom Christ has set us free. Paul is really clear on this, and Jesus, when he gives the Beatitudes, these we move away from these prohibitions of the old law and towards a series of astonishing promises to what Pope Benedict called Christ's own self-portrait. That who more than Christ was hungered after justice, or thirsted for righteousness, or was meek and gentle and pure in heart, and all the rest of them, right? And so freedom, learning how to properly use our freedom, or as Daniel might see with the parents teaching your kids how to properly use their freedom, to use it well. That freedom and autonomy are not the same thing. That I was talking to Father John before this, and trying to get the etymology of the word right here, that autonomy means literally being a law unto oneself, and that's not the case. That we receive from God, the natural law written in our hearts, but we also receive the divine law given through Christ to his church that continues to protect and transmit and try to teach us well. And so understanding that we are not a law to ourselves, but that we find our human flourishing, we find authentic freedom, we use our freedom well, best when we conform to this divine revelation of God's law, which is really the law of love.
Good. Excellent. So we have a responsibility. We have a Catholic responsibility to form our children. And we also have the responsibility to vote no against this question number one, or against. I heard someone tell me that it's a little confusing. If there's no checkbox for no,
against, I think it's for and against.
Right.
And we want, and we want to be clear. This is not. It is precisely because we are for human freedom, for human life, for women, for children, for families,
right,
for a state that is strong and flourishing, for the common good of every man, woman, and child. This is why we want to vote against enshrining these very permissive abortion regulations into the Constitution. And that's why the letter is so long, because I actually, for the first half, will detail exactly how free and open abortion is in this state, right up to the point of birth, and paid for by taxpayers. And minors, there's supposed to be parental notification, but physicians, under certain circumstances, in most circumstances, can
remove the parent, right, from working with their children.
Correct.
If there is a teen pregnancy,
right.
They don't even have to know about it.
And that's a really frightening thing.
I mean, it's really frightening. State is therefore taking over more and more the education of your child. And so,
if I can chime in on here, based on my marketing degree, notice the terminology they're using in the question: against the amendment, against, and it's written in our U.S. history books, and usually we're for freedoms, we're for. So by wording it in such a way that I have to vote against because my practice ballot just came in the mail, it is inherently putting me, I'm against freedom. I'm against, and that is the subtlety of what they're doing with the question.
Excellent. Thank you, Danny, on that.
And just to be clear, I mean, at the end of the day, if this thing fails, whether it passes or fails, it doesn't change the actual laws, right? If it fails, the law is still a law, and women of virtually any age can get abortions all the way up to the point of birth. But if it passes, if voters here choose for, and they vote for this amendment, if it passes, that means that it ties the hands of future legislatures. It might undo some of the protections now, conscience protections for Catholic and other Christian providers who don't want to do things that are immoral. It might nullify the laws that require parental notification, even in these rare circumstances that it is required. It will make it more difficult. At this stage, it's not only physicians that can provide abortions in Maryland. There's practitioners, midwives. I don't know how much training it takes to be a midwife, and I know some very good midwives, but I mean, this is a pretty serious procedure. It can be, especially because later on. What if the legislature one day wanted to say, no, we want to hold this for nurse practitioners, physician assistants, and physicians? Arguably, the legislature couldn't do that if this amendment passes. So this is not, it will in no way undo the current permissive abortion laws, but it will make it more difficult to protect women, even women who are taking unborn life. It will make it more difficult to protect them and their lives and their health in the future.
Good. Well, there you have it. And now we know what our marching orders are. Our marching orders, right?
Yes, sure.
And yours. God bless.
Thanks for joining us.